Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3 for this news report today. We're just talking about merging anti-terror units and talking about the TransPacific partnership, how it'll undermine democracy. While at the same time you have Brzezinski, a globalist, saying that we need the EU-US trade pact, Western democracy should create it to counterbalance Chinese power. But we're going to do what? We're going to lose our sovereignty. And that's what Merkel is saying. Don't let a crisis go to waste, like Rahm Emanuel and many others say. But we know what? That Washington, D.C., FBI foils own terror plot again. FBI's nationwide stable of patsies can be switched live at any moment. That's right. So it's to give the illusion of fear. That's why you have this. News of terror plot to attack a rail train in Canada. Says here, after the Boston Marathon bombings has pushed public security to the front burner, just as Harper government seeks Parliament's authority to curb civil liberties in the name of keeping Canadians safe. So they want a government-sponsored counterterrorism bill, give authorities extra powers of arrest and detention. And we're talking about this, right? 2 people killed on the rail thing. The investigation was part of a cross-border operation involving Canadian law enforcement agencies, the FBI, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Canada may consider joining U.S. missile shield. Says the government is believed to be facing a request by the United States to join an anti-ballistic missile shield. It's coming as Americans ramp up their own protection in response to increased tension with North Korea and Iran, which is, like I said, they're completely playing North Korea's stage towards China. That's who it's aimed at. So it's after the Pentagon announced in March its intention to place 14 new ground-based missile interceptors in Alaska by 2017, probably aimed at China and Russia. Pentagon NATO allies witnessed missile defense tests in skies over central New York. So it says here that military leaders from the Pentagon, Italy, and Germany were in central New York this week to witness a classified test of missile defense systems. Some of this directed energy lasers and that. As part of the test, a small plane and simulated tactical ballistic missile were detected and tracked by a medium extended air defense system, or MEADS, which was basically developed by Lockheed Martin. I'm not sure if you guys ever saw that video recently that was posted, basically about the drones being taken down by lasers. I'm going to try to move fast here, so just stick with me. The end of April, a time of human sacrifice. So I've actually covered a video similar to this theme or concept in the past couple of years. Why do we often witness tragedy and senseless deaths during the second half of April? The list of violent events that occurred during this time period is simply staggering. Here are some of them. April 19th, 93, Waco massacre. They basically burned down a compound of a sect of Branch Davidians, including 76 men, women, and children. April 19th, 95, Oklahoma City bombing, 168 people killed. Actually, I think that some of them were a school, wasn't it? April 20th, 1999, you have Columbine High School massacre, 13 people murdered. April 16th, 2007, Virginia Tech massacre. April 16th, 2013, Boston Marathon explosion. April 18th, fertilizer plant explosion. Says this event occurred almost exactly 20 years after the Waco massacre. So on April 16, 1947, a ship loaded with ammonium nitrate docked at the port of Texas City erupted in flames, causing a massive explosion that killed 576 people. Says CNN actually published an article in 2011 titled, "What is it about mid-April and violence in America?" discussing the events that occur in mid-April. Says, sadly, the article only bashed conspiracy theorists and basically said, if you look for answers further than mass media, you are crazy and potentially dangerous. I've gone through the dates of the occultists and that, as far as these April 20th and around then, and it does have to do with sacrificing, and they like to sacrifice children as well. It's part of some kind of blood sacrifice in the spring. Aunt of suspected bomber says they're angels. Here's conspiracy theories. So again, conspiracy theories, so it's not true then. It says here that I know them as angels. I'm suspicious that this was staged. She says she doesn't believe her nephews could be behind the attacks. My sons were framed by FBI, says father of Boston suspects. In a telephone interview, it says here that on Monday, the father said the bombing had been orchestrated by the FBI, which kept my Tamerlan constantly under surveillance. Says here he planned to follow up the case, saying, I only know what they are showing on television, much like most Americans, right? We plan to go and see him in America if Allah permits. They just wanted to set up Tamerlan and his brother who just turned out to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, the father said. Tamerlan was driving him to school when they started shooting at them. This is a setup of political order, a Hollywood show. He also dismissed allegations that Tamerlan had radical views. Said he did get religious after getting married. He went to the mosque every Friday. He prayed 5 times a day. He was a righteous Muslim and could not have done what he was accused of. Boston bombings shadow immigration bill. So while all of this was going on, the Boston bombings cast a shadow Friday over the start of the debate on legislation to remake U.S. immigration system. So a lot of people in the comment boards are saying, well, we got to close the borders. That's the solution. We got to stop letting these Muslims in and stuff. Just a quick side note, I see these guys in the front, and they're all what? They're all Zionists. They're all Zionists. Some of them even have dual citizenship to Israel, like Chuck Schumer. Then all these people in the back, minorities, right? All used. I'm not saying they're idiots. I'm just saying they're all being used as useful idiots, including the guys in the front, for multiculturalism. Amid Boston frenzy, privacy-shattering CISPA internet bill passes U.S. House. Amid the massive amount of information coming out of the Boston Marathon bombings, the Ultra-Invasive Cybersecurity Intelligence Sharing Protection Act, CISPA, has passed the House with a vote of 288 to 127. So even the mainstream media outlets like Yahoo News have highlighted the many threats posed by CISPA. Private companies will be able to share your data in real time with the U.S. government and even other corporations, all without a warrant. So, well, those things were passed in the shadows, smoke and mirrors, kind of like what they had with North Korea, what was going on with Cyprus and military movements by Russia, and then saying, building off that, you had what, the whole thing about this is a strike at Russia, a jab at Russia, pointing to where they might be headed next if they don't win in Syria. Also, possibly the merging of the anti-terror services, security services of the West and the East, mostly Russia and the United States. You had all this martial law and all these clamping down and stuff going on here. FAA orders no-fly zone over Boston Marathon explosion site, so a no-fly zone. There's even they said cell phones were jammed or they were overloaded. They could have just been shut down. So they're taking down telecom services. They take down traveling services. They completely close down towns and quarantine them off. This is a big exercise as well. So you never let a crisis go to waste. Remember, we were just talking about that. DoD will now push assistance to civil authorities. The strategy released in February looks at the lessons learned from past experiences, from Hurricane Katrina to Hurricane Sandy. So it says here, it looks at the changes, including the growth of communication networks, social networks, dependence on private sector capabilities, and the rising expectations from the president and from the secretary, and certainly from the American people, let's engineer consent, that we will be prepared to provide support to civil authorities within a 24 to 48-hour window. They said the old paradigm was to have civil partners pull assistance from the DoD, while now DoD will actually push assistance where it's needed, right? Why does Boston celebrate martial law with chants of USA, USA? So something that could probably almost make you lose your lunch or your dinner after watching that chanting USA. It's almost like the Iran hostage crisis, where you saw people chanting USA and burning Iranian flags and that, and beating up Iranian citizens in America. The people of Massachusetts now owe federal and local law enforcement a debt of gratitude. So it says here, crowds poured on the streets of the Watertown surrounding boroughs, celebrating what they believe was the end of their terrible ordeal that began. So it looked more like a post-game celebration following a Boston Celtics NBA championship or Red Sox World Series victory. Major media reported the communal outpouring of national pride, where residents could be seen with painted faces brandishing American flags, shouting USA. And those were younger people too. Many Bostonians love and worship the militarized police state. The images depicting the havoc were undoubtedly a disturbing sight. Even more disturbing were the sights and sounds of Bostonians celebrating and cheering the capture of suspected number 2 following the implementation of a full-blown militarized police state in and around Boston. These mindless sheep were cheering the suspect's capture despite the fact that the FBI and local police forces have still failed to produce any concrete evidence proving that either of them planted the bombs. Even worse was how many of these mindless zombies were cheering the militarized police forces that put the city under a state of martial law, all in the name of capturing a single 19-year-old young man. John Rappaport from NoMoreFakeNews.com titles his article, Media Magic, Not One Angry Person in Boston. So you go in there and check it out. He always gives nice in-depth articles and takes on the situations. Video shows police in Watertown rip family from their home and treat them like terrorists. So I haven't seen these videos. I can imagine how they would be, but I don't want to watch them because they're going to make me very angry probably. In this astonishing video in Massachusetts, you see heavily armed militarized police rip a family from their home and treat them like potential terrorists, banging on their door, then detain them, search their home, and shout orders at all of them, pointing assault rifles at them as though they were dangerous terrorists. Talking about the police state trampling of the Constitution was shown to be completely worthless and a mere exercise in power, dominance, as the suspects were caught thanks to tips from the general public. Again, they shot up the guy's boat. So it says here, the Tsarnaev, wounded in serious condition, will get public safety exception to Miranda rights. It says, public safety exception. The wounds speak for themselves. Those wishing to learn in what circumstances the Miranda rights can be overruled, read on. So there's an exception to it. Again, this is pushing the boundaries, the litmus test. What can they get away with? Senator Lindsey Graham, one of those Zionists in that picture I was showing you, says to suspend the Constitution for Boston Marathon suspect and designate him an enemy combatant. So this guy's a real douchebag. Boston Marathon bombs. He's about as bad as Lieberman, which I'm glad he finally left. Boston Marathon bombs. Tamerlan Tsarnaev, interviewed by FBI in 2011. He was interviewed in 2011, but did the FBI phone Boston suspect before fatal shootout? The father of the Boston bombing suspects claims that Channel 4 News that the FBI telephoned his elder son after the attack and prior to a fatal shootout. They claim. Some people are asking the question, was Boston bomber's uncle Ruslan with the CIA the uncle of the two men who set off the bombs, who says here worked as a consultant for the Agency for the International Development, USAID, often a cover for agents for the CIA. He had basically had plain-spoken condemnation for his two nephews. Remember that? He's a well-connected oil executive. So amidst all the conspiracy theories that are going on right now, the main thing is that the agenda moves forward. So all those things that they got away with, that's the thing to really focus on. The bills that were passed, the CISPA and the other bill, the immigration bill, that's the main thing. CIA trained Afghans to use pressure cookers against the Soviet army, says CIA agent. Go in there and check that video out. Fox News host proposes putting listening devices in mosque after Boston bombing, so they're already surveilled, and I want to put them in their basically their houses of God for them. It says here, we need more cameras, and we need them now. Remember that? The case for surveillance after the Boston bombing. But Boston police chief says facial recognition technology did not help find bombing suspects. And another Zionist, Representative Peter King, blasted the FBI on Sunday for failing to prevent the Tsarnaev brothers from carrying out the Boston Marathon bombings when the agency had already been told about the other brothers' extremist potential. So he must have not gotten the memo that the FBI actually foils its own terror plots. So they run it. They run the terrorism business. It's good to keep the fear levels up. Multiple chemical bombs explode at Michigan Middle School. So chemical bombs. Well, what were they? They were drain cleaner and aluminum in soda bottles. It says it wasn't a big explosion. The locker didn't even open. So the media is just really scare the heck out of people. Never let them calm down. Never give them a break. We have 2 shot at Denver Civic Center, 420 pot rally. So the fact that they hold it on 420 is just kind of a joke to me. It's 2 people were shot in the leg in Denver Civic Center during Saturday's 420 pot rally, and a 3rd person was grazed by a bullet. So this is after in Colorado, they supposedly legalized marijuana. And of course, I heard this right away, from somebody else. And the first thing I did was just like, you never get a break, This was probably a psyop. This is probably a psyop carried out so that to say, see, we shouldn't have done this. Shouldn't have done this. See, potheads are some very violent, murderous people. Don't worry about alcoholics and people that drink and go out and fight and bash each other's heads in at bars. America #1 in fear, stress, anger, divorce, obesity, and antidepressants. This is where we'll come back to. This is from Der Spiegel. And they're actually talking about what? Generation stress. Try to get the picture over here for you. So it's all around the world right now. And we'll return on basically with this and move into the economy in the next video. This is GGN. I'm Darko. Thank you.